Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. I am Candace Breyer, Chairperson of the Zoning Board of Appeals. This meeting is being held electronically to protect public health and safety due to the COVID-19 virus and to comply with orders issued by the Governor, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and/or the Washtenaw County Health Department. We intend to conduct this meeting similarly to an in-person meeting. However, please be patient if there are technical issues. The Zoning Board of Appeals is a 9-person volunteer board nominated by the mayor and approved by the City Council. First, we will hear from Planning Services, represented tonight by Mr. John Barrett. Then the applicant or their representative will make their presentation. Applicants will have 5 minutes in which to make their presentation. Staff will keep time and announce when 30 seconds are remaining. We may ask questions of either the city or the applicant. We will acknowledge any written communications received by the board. We will allow an appearing party to express their support or objections. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment periods, please call 206-337-9723 or toll free 888-788-0099 and enter meeting ID 934-8311-5569. This information is also available on the published agenda in the public notices section of the city website and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN Channel 16, AT&T Channel 99, and online at www.a2gov.org/watchctn. You need not have signed up in advance. In order to be called on to speak, callers must press *9 to raise their hand. Callers will then be called upon by city staff one by one using the last 3 numbers of their phone number. Upon being called on, callers will hear an audible announcement that the host is allowing them to speak. We ask that callers start by stating their name and address and speak from a quiet place and mute any background noise such as television so that we can hear you directly. City staff will announce when callers have 30 seconds left of their 3-minute comment period. After 3 minutes, callers will be placed on mute so that we can proceed to the next speaker. The board will discuss the appeal and formulate a motion to approve the appeal. 5 affirmative votes of the board will be required for an appeal to be granted. Finally, any qualified party who is aggrieved by a decision of the board can appeal that decision to the Washtenaw County Circuit Court on a timely basis. Roll call. I am here. Mike Daniel.
Here.
Dave DeVarty.
DeVarty here.
Chris Fraley.
Fraley here.
Nicole Eisenman.
Here.
Todd Grant.
Here.
Elizabeth Nelson.
Here.
Charlotte Wilson.
Here.
Julia Good.
Here.
We have a quorum. Moving on to approval of the agenda. I will note quickly that I do have a conflict of interest with the second to the last item on the agenda, petition ZBA 20-034, 2150 Freeze Avenue. So I will need to recuse myself from that item. But any discussion on the agenda, any comments on the agenda? If not, do I have a, yes, Todd.
Yeah, I mentioned before everybody joined, I'd like to take a restroom and water break after we finish one of these items somewhere between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. I think it'll do us all good. And then come back and we can finish the last half or third of the agenda.
Agreed.
Being well hydrated.
Yes, I think that's a great plan. So we will we'll make sure to handle that when we get to that point. Any other questions, comments? If not, do I have a motion to approve the agenda? A motion from Chris, support?
Support.
Support from Charlotte. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to approval of the minutes. We have minutes from the December 2nd, 2020 ZBA meeting. Any comments or corrections to those minutes? If not, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from our December meeting?
I'll move to approve them.
Thank you, Nicole. Support?
Second, DeVarty.
Thank you, Dave. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to public hearings. Petition ZBA 20-027, 217 West Madison Street. John?
All right, my name is John Barrett. I'm the zoning coordinator for the city of Ann Arbor. 217 West Madison Street is the first petition this evening before us. Dan Murphy, the property owner, is requesting relief from section 5.32.2, alteration to a non-conforming structure, in order to construct a 68 square foot addition to the rear of an existing single-family home for a new entry and powder room. The plans also include raising the roof at the rear of the existing first floor 5 feet 8 inches to accommodate a new master bedroom on the second floor. The property is zoned R2A, two-family dwelling district. The new additions will not encroach or extend further into the front and rear setbacks. The project received historic district approval in April 2020. The subject property is in the Old West Side Historic District on the southeast corner of West Madison and South First Street. The home was built in 1900 and is approximately 1,138 square feet in size. The home is non-conforming as it does not meet the required average front setback along West Madison Street and the required 20-foot rear yard setback. The new single-story addition will replace an existing porch with a shed roof and remain in the same footprint. The second-story addition will convert a finished storage space that does not meet required ceiling heights to accommodate a new master bedroom. The new second floor will maintain the existing roof slope and raise the height 5 feet 8 inches. You'll follow along on my screen. And let's see. Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
I need to change.
I do not see it, John.
I don't either.
Now I see it.
Yes.
Do we still see it?
Yep.
All right. The first slide is the zoning map. You see the subject property highlighted in yellow in the center of the screen at the corner of Madison and South First. The next slide is the neighborhood map showing existing conditions and surrounding neighborhoods. The next slide is the zoomed in aerial photo of the existing property. And you can kind of see this notched out area. That's where the 68 square foot addition is projected to be. The next slide is the survey that was submitted with the application. You see the existing porch back here. The next series of slides are the elevation proposed site plan. You see the proposed 68 square foot single story addition, and for the new mudroom and powder room is going to be right here. And then this roof area is the proposed 5 foot 8 inch increase in elevation. This is the elevation looking, the north elevation looking directly at the property from Madison Street, the front facade. This is the west elevation. This is the proposed 68 square foot addition and the new roof and where it's going to be raised. This is the south elevation, looking at it from the backyard at the increase in height of the roof, and then the 68 square foot addition. The east elevation, and you don't see the 68 square foot, it's on the other side of this roof, raised roof area, and this is the existing shed in the backyard. These are the floor plans that were submitted with the application. You can see the 68 square foot addition with the entry and powder room. And then it goes into the kitchen. This is the proposed second floor plan with the new bedroom and closet. A 195 square foot addition. This is the proposed roof plan. These are pictures that were submitted with the application by the petitioner. And you see the rear of the home right here. And they're showing the proposed location of the first floor addition and the proposed location of the second floor addition. Different perspectives, the front of the house along Madison. These are the photos that were taken on my inspection. You see the front facade as it exists. This is the rear porch area looking directly at the neighbor to the south. Next slide is the existing porch area, and this is where the 68 square foot addition is being proposed. This is the area where the 5 foot 8 inch elevation in the existing roof is to occur. And just another representation of that increase in elevation. This is the backyard, looking at the south area of the backyard. You see the shed in the background. This is looking at the property from First Street. This is the other side of the home on the east side elevation with the shed and the abutting neighbor. And that's a direct look at the south elevation, the abutting property. And this is directly across the street of Madison on the other side of the street. And that concludes my presentation, and I can take any questions at this time.
Thank you, John. Any questions for staff?
I
Yes,
guess
Dave.
I have a question. Maybe this is properly directed at the homeowner or the architect. I was by there today and it looks like construction's already started on that second floor addition, but I did not see a posted building permit. Have they pulled the building permit yet? Do you know? Or should I ask them?
No, what's taking place is the original building permit, they did a revised building permit. The original building permit showed the work that we're discussing this evening. They removed that. The work that's taking place is all interior remodeling work at this time. And if this is approved tonight, then they will submit another building permit for work that we're discussing tonight.
It actually looks like they've already increased the height of that roof for where they're doing that too. But I can ask the presenter
Yeah,
about
I'm not aware of that.
okay.
Any other questions for John? All right, if the petitioner is prepared to speak, you will have 5 minutes.
Thanks all for your time tonight. Sounds like you've got a long night, so I'll try to be as brief as I can be. My wife here, Meredith, and I bought the property about 1.5 years ago. We took our time trying to figure out how we wanted to make it work for us as our home will be in for 20 or 30 years. We really love the Old West Side neighborhood, the ability to kind of walk around. We also both work from home full time. I'm a reporter and she's a sustainability consultant. And while we're moving some things around, the main goal was to be able to find a place where we would both be able to work from home without yelling over each other's Zoom calls, as we've all become too accustomed of this year. And so we wanted to do that while making sure we were good neighbors and that we were preserving the historic nature of the home. So we found a local, a friend of ours who's an architect who went to the University of Michigan and lives in town and understands our goals of what we wanted to do. And we picked our contractor specifically as somebody who understood, the value of the historic nature of the home and making sure we were good neighbors. So we spent a while coming up with the best plans possible. And we felt that this was the best way to make the home functional for us for the next 20 or 30 years, while still, preserving the history and making sure we're being good neighbors about it. And then I'll just quickly address, since I imagine it'll come up, the question about the permits. So as John explained, we sort of submitted and resubmitted when we misunderstood some of what was required or some of the paperwork that we didn't quite have lined up the first time around. And my understanding with our contractor was that all the work that they've been doing to date was on the allowed in the current permit and not something that needed any type of exception or waiver from the zoning board.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for the petitioner?
I guess I just have one statement. It would have been helpful to have the building permit, even if it was a little bit off, posted so we could see that there was in process. If you post that on the front of the house, since I did not see any notification that there was a building underway. And my understanding of even that second floor raising the roof, and I'm not sure John Barrett, our staff person, could correct me. I believe with non-conforming structures, anything like that may need the alteration variance as well. An alteration variance is easier than a zoning variance because it's our standards the standards you have to meet in order for us to approve it are much more lax. But I do believe, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, that it would have been proper to come to the ZBA before raising the roof. And just one question. Why are you not raising the roof? It looks like the roof is going to be a foot below the other roof line, and I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, so they could address both of those first. Yeah, apologize for not having the posting there. I'll talk to our contractor about that. This is our first time owning a home or going through any of this, so we'll get that straightened out to whatever degree we need to. And then in terms of the roof line being slightly off, that was actually something the historic district asked us to do in order they wanted us to maintain the initial sort of roof line there. So they asked us to sink that down a little bit to make sure you could see what the original line was.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. So in response to your question, Dave, this roof being raised to 5 feet 8 inches in that rear facade, that is part of what's under consideration tonight, along with the 68 square foot addition. They're both part of this alteration to a non-conforming structure.
Gotcha.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, seeing none, if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now. Once you've called in, please raise your hand and you'll be called on by city staff to speak.
There are no callers, but let's give it just a little bit longer.
In the meantime, I did not see any correspondence in the packet with regard to this petition. I don't think we received any, did we, John?
A few letters came in this afternoon that were included in the agenda packet that was sent out this afternoon.
Oh. Oh, there is an email right here from (217) West Madison Street. They live across the street at 618 South Main Street, in favor of the alteration.
There should be a total of 4 letters. I think we collected from closer neighbors nearby too, saying that they were in favor of the plans.
And then this one is in support from 213 West Madison Street. And support from 603 Second Street. And it looks like there's one more here from 614 South First Street. And with that, we are in discussion. Dave.
This is one, it's a very modest size home, very modest addition. I have to say, your response, the owner's response to my question about the roof line, the variance in the roof line with the existing roof line, is that they were doing that to accommodate the Historic District Commission, speaks very favorably to the attitude of the builders and the owner in trying to comply with this historic district area. I'm going to vote for this. I think it's a modest addition, and it's an alteration to a non-conforming structure, which is easier to meet the standards that we have before us.
Todd?
Yes, I agree with Dave, and I would just say that, as John mentioned, the report says that there's not going to be any further encroachments into the front and rear setbacks, and it's going to use the existing footprint. So I'll be voting yes on this as well.
Any other? Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I'm prepared to make a motion unless other people want to speak.
No, I think that's great. Thank you.
Okay. ZBA 20-027, 217 West Madison Street. Alteration to a non-conforming structure. The Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants relief from Section 532(2), alteration to a non-conforming structure to allow a 68 foot, 11 foot by 6 foot 2 inch square foot addition at the back of the existing residence, and the increase in roof height of 5 feet 8 inches to accommodate a second floor master bedroom. The additions are not to encroach or extend further into the front and rear setbacks.
We have a motion from Dave. Do we have support?
Support.
Support from Charlotte. Julia.
Yes.
Charlotte.
Yes.
Elizabeth.
Yes.
Todd.
Yes.
Nicole.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Dave.
Vardy, yes.
Mike.
Yes.
I also vote yes. The request is granted. Moving on to petition ZBA 20-028 929 Barton Drive. John?
M. Dawes Lazar, representative of Northside Community Church, is requesting a variance from section 5.24.4, subsection C2, to allow an electronic message sign to exceed the maximum allowable 25% total sign area of a sign. The proposed sign is 47.6 square feet in size, and the electronic message center will be 25.6 square feet, or 53.8% of the total sign area. The property is zoned R1C, single-family residential. Northside Community Church is located on the northeast corner of Barton Drive and Traver Road in the Northside neighborhood. Ann Arbor Steam School is across the street due west of the church. The existing sign is a double-sided ground-mounted sign with a fixed identification panel and a changeable copy area that displays event information for the church. The proposed sign is a double-sided sign that is 23.8 square feet per face for an overall size of 47.6 square feet. The upper portion will be a solid panel identifying the church. The lower portion is an electronic video screen that will be 12.8 square feet per side for a total of 25.6 square feet. The proposed electronic panel is 53% of the overall sign, exceeding the allowed 25% requirement. The electronic panel will enable the church to advertise upcoming events and activities. First slide is the zoning map. You see the highlighted parcel in the center of your screen. The subject property is at the corner of Barton Drive and Traver Street. The next slide is the neighborhood map showing surrounding properties and existing conditions. The next slide is the zoomed in aerial photo, and you can see the existing ground mounted sign right there, where I'm circling my cursor. The next slide is the survey of the property that was submitted with the application, and you see down here existing sign being located on the survey. The next slide is the sign itself and the conceptual design. You see the panel is the electronic message copy is 2 feet 4 inches in height by 5 feet 6 inches. And you see the Northside Community Church, there'll be a static panel. The following slides are from my inspection of the property. You see the church itself. Next slide is showing the existing sign looking southward at, and you see the neighborhood and residences in the background. And the next slide is looking up Barton Road and to the north, and you see the existing church sign. That is the end of my presentation, and I'll take any questions at this time.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John? Ted?
Yes, John, I think I sent an email to you. I had asked when the sign ordinance was changed, and it was changed on December 21st. So it's only been a month, essentially. That's correct. Okay. And from my own little calculations, it looks as though under the old ordinance, the sign would have only been over by about 4% from what was allowed. I actually came up with 3.8% in square footage. Is that what you got, or do you know what that figure is?
That's correct. It would have, under the old ordinance, it would have been 3.8% over what was allowed. The applicant is going to comment further, but I will tell you that they had some issues with the manufacturer, and hiring an installer, and the application was originally submitted last year, I believe in March or April of last year, and they didn't get their application until after the new sign ordinance came into effect. So the new sign ordinance takes precedence, but a lot of this action was already in motion and was taking place prior to December of last year, many months in advance, probably close to 9 months. But I will let Ms. Dawes-Lazar comment on that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, go ahead.
I'm interested in, and I'm apologies for not getting this in earlier, but what's the consideration of this type of sign as opposed to the moving signs?
So the message is to remain static for a minimum of 1 minute.
Okay.
It can't flash or scroll or move. They can have their event and their advertisement up, and then it remains for a minute, and then the next message.
Okay, thank you.
Dave?
John, do you have a sense what I didn't measure the old sign. what's the size of this in relation to the old sign is? Is this much bigger? It looks like probably about the same.
No, it's actually a little bit less.
Okay.
The old sign is approximately 54 square feet, and this is down to 47.6. So the actual square footage is reduced.
Gotcha.
Any other questions for John? All right, the petitioner is ready. You may begin. You have 5 minutes.
So my name's Terry McGinn, and I'm the part-time pastor of the church, and Ann Dawes Lazar, who was mentioned as the petitioner, is here as well. Northside Community Church was established in 1956 on the north side. The building was built in 1966. Since that time, there have been 2 signs. The first one was up against the building and somewhat problematic because it was difficult to read from the street. And then this sign, the current sign, was erected several years ago. 18 months ago, we set out to replace our sign with 2 primary goals and a secondary goal. First, we wanted a sign that could be changed more than monthly or weekly, not every minute, but more than monthly or weekly, because a variety of groups use our building for a variety of purposes. We host 3 other congregations, Gretchen's House Daycare Center, and regular recitals by music school students and faculty. We wanted the sign to be able to identify the next upcoming event in the building so that visitors would readily know they were in the right place. Second, we wanted to have a sign that could be changed easily, preferably from inside the building. Our office manager has recently been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and we had no idea what level of disability she would experience from the disease. The current sign is very difficult to change. The cover that needs to be opened in order to change the sign is heavy and dangerous. In winter, accessing the sign requires trekking through the snow with a box of letters to be manually changed. Finally, we wanted a sign that could be easily programmed to be turned on and off. We have had trouble with our sign being on when it should be off, for example, at night, and vice versa, not being on during the day when we do want it on during the day. And despite the attempt of professional electricians to attach both clock-driven and light-sensitive controls, it continues to be a problem off and on. None of us have been through an electronic sign purchasing process before, so at each step, we relied on professional advice. We solicited competitive bids and discovered that a computer-driven electronic sign the same size as our current sign would cost $15,000, which was a bit of a shock for a congregation whose Sunday morning attendance is about 30, but we raised the money. The vendor we selected was in Florida, so we put the sign maker we thought in touch with the city to make sure that they could ask any questions they might have. Later, we learned that the installation of the sign would require professional local installers. So after exploring various possibilities, we engaged an installation company for another $5,000. The new sign is actually, as you heard, just a bit smaller overall than the existing sign. But the installation company, in seeking permits, discovered that while the total area of the sign was permissible, the display section is about 3 to 4% too large based on the sign code in place at the time. We decided to appeal for an exception, which, as you know, involved another $750, and we commissioned the required property survey, which cost an additional $2,000. So here we are, $22,750 later, still with no sign. So we come tonight asking you to help us achieve what originally seemed like a straightforward goal: to swap a hard-to-manage, inflexible sign for one that had essentially the same physical presence, but for the sake of our staff, visitors, and neighbors, is safer, more functional, and more manageable. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Yes, Todd.
Yes, Reverend McGinn, when did you give the instructions to build the proposed sign to your contractor in Florida? Do you remember
When did we
roughly? Yeah,
when did
what
we
month
do
and
that?
year? Yes,
I might have to ask Ann here, but
roughly, you know.
Around, it was around the early 2019, maybe, or
Okay.
mid 2019.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Yes, Elizabeth.
I was curious if the sign is going to go in the exact same spot in the property.
I
new
think
sign.
that's the plan.
Okay. Because the only I'm a little bit familiar with this area, and I appreciate all that you described about the different uses of your building, and that I taught for a period of time at Northside, and so I understand that, like, you know, with your location is your building is used by a lot of different people. But I guess I was curious. One of the communications that we got was from somebody who suggested that the fact that it's illuminated may be of more concern to somebody who actually would have that facing their house. And so that's why I was curious about the location. I guess the other question I had was, you talked about turning it off and on. What are the hours that you typically have it illuminated? I mean, presumably you have it illuminated for some hours during the evening if you have evening things happening there.
The attempt, I think, has been to have it go off around 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night, but we haven't always been very successful. The last
Gotcha.
electrician who we brought in said that will solve that. And of course, I don't need to tell you that it didn't completely solve it. It seems to be sporadic. So part of the reason we haven't been real aggressive about that is because we assume that with a new sign, we'll have easier management of it from a computer inside.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think the logic would be to have it go off at the time that the evening event has begun. So most of our evening events wouldn't begin any later than 8 o'clock.
We've always tried to be really responsive to neighbors to the point of like having somebody drive over there to shut it off when we thought it was off and somebody let us know it was on.
I appreciate that. I sort of live in the shadow of the big stadium sign, and I remember when that was put up, people were rather shocked.
So I will let everyone know that with the new ordinance, it requires for properties that do not contain a business that signs shall be extinguished between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m.
I don't think ours would need to be on that late.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, seeing none, if there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now. Once you call in, please raise your hand and staff will call on you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. While we wait, I will note, and Elizabeth mentioned as well, we did receive one correspondence regarding this petition from Eric Paul Dennis. Not in specific objection to this proposal, but again, noting some concerns about light emissions and potential for light pollution from signs such as this one.
No callers.
Thanks, Kristen. With that, we are in discussion. Chris.
Yeah, I would just like to say to the petitioner, once I hear you say that you have a person that, can't get through there because of snow, that, has functional issues and the sign is problematic, my first concern is really as an official of the community, I want to be able to offer access to the people that need the access the most. And so I want to be able to support this simply because of that. And because I think accessibility within our community is really important. So I will be supporting this.
Any other discussion? Charlotte.
I'm really sympathetic to the position of the applicant. However, I'm really having a hard time granting this variance because I don't see how it's not self-imposed, and I'm not seeing any specific particular uniqueness to the actual lot and property itself. to allow for the larger sign. So I'm likely not going to be in favor, but I do want to say I'm sympathetic to that situation.
Dave, go ahead.
I'd like to speak to that. I'm going to vote for this. It's a reduction in the sign. It's not a larger sign. It's a smaller sign. The only need for the variance is because that part that changes is so slightly, less than 4% over what the new sign ordinance says. To me, it's an improvement. And just as, yeah, I voted against the Arborland sign, if all of you remember that, because they were going to be advertising commercial businesses along with, I thought it was a great thing that they were doing to improve the sign and make it easier to replace the lights, but it was going to serve an advertising function different than the historic function of just the time and temperature. So that's why I voted against that, even though it was an improvement. This one is an improvement all around, and it's an easy one for me to vote for. And the church is a community center for the neighborhood and for groups that use the church. The sign just seems like a way to facilitate the use by that facility of community members throughout the area. So to me, it provides substantial benefit to the community to allow this variance.
Nicole.
So I'm pretty familiar with this location. I drive past it most days. And I do just want to note that the site is a little bit unique in that it's across the street from a school. Its largest property line is across the street from a school, so that's something to note. And there's a lot of a change in elevation there that's pretty extreme. And the sign actually sits at the low end of that hill. So there's not, in my mind, there's not a lot of exposure to the surrounding neighborhood, with the exception of 4 or 5 homes that are across the smaller property line. That said, it still is larger, so I'm a little bit torn about how I'll vote on this. But seeing that it is kind of a unique site, I'm kind of inclined to support this.
Ted.
Yes, I think what stands out to me, 2 things. A question I asked of John originally, that this is, if the old ordinance were in effect today, and the new one has only been in effect for a little over a month, that the sign would only be 3.8% over. They've been working on this for 2 years, and because of the complexity and perhaps because of some economic circumstances, they couldn't move on this as quickly as maybe somebody else would. I think they were sort of caught by a change in the ordinance. So that weighs in my mind a little favorably, those 2 things together in terms of this. And I think Charlotte was correct that it's not absolutely necessary to have a church and have other organizations there, but it's going to be very helpful for people. And it will make things easier. And it will allow lights to be turned off when they're supposed to be turned off, as opposed to perhaps being on overnight. There's also, again, it's not a formal criteria, but for this particular organization, it's a fairly sizable financial investment. So I think mostly because it's only a little bit more than the ordinance would have allowed in terms of an illuminated area, but the sign in fact is smaller than the current one. And the fact that they've been working on this for 2 years, in my mind, those things say that in a case like this is where a literal application of the process is maybe a little harsh. On balance, I'm going to vote for this.
In the efforts of time, I'm not going to restate everything that was just said, but I think that what Todd just mentioned spoke to where I am at on this issue as well. I think, as he said, the strict interpretation or the strict application of our standards, maybe in this case, doesn't give the whole story just because of some little factors that have occurred, like Todd said, the ordinance change and how long they've been working on this and the type of organization that they are doesn't allow them to move as quickly with as many resources as maybe a private developer or some other type of site would have access to. So I'll likely support this as well. Any other discussion, or are we ready for a motion?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Thank you, Dave.
I have one question for staff. I've been sent some motions that make it easier to. Do we apply the standards that we apply to like setback variances and other to the sign ordinance variances? Because the motion that I was sent was basically the same format as most of our zoning variances. Isn't the sign ordinance different in some ways?
The motion should have the paragraph that should be read in the affirmative.
The top, but I don't need to do the stuff underneath?
No, I don't believe so. But
Okay.
So there are times when a sign needs a setback variance based on where it's going to be installed.
Gotcha. Okay, ZBA 20-028, 929 Barton Drive, variance. Based on the following findings and in accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variance from Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, Section 524-2, C2. A variance of 23.8% to allow a new ground sign with an electronic message center to exceed the allowable 25% of the total sign area.
Motion from Dave. Do I have support? Support from Chris. Thank you. Todd.
Yes, thank you.
Dave.
DeVarty, yes.
I also vote yes. Julia.
Yes.
Chris.
Chris, yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Elizabeth.
Yes.
Nicole.
Yes.
Charlotte.
No.
All right. The request is granted. Moving on to petition ZBA 20-029, 1301 Henry Street. John?
Joseph Phillips, representing the property owner, is requesting relief from section 5.32.2, alteration to a non-conforming structure, in order to construct a 784 square foot addition to the rear of an existing single-family home for a new bedroom, bathroom, pantry, and garage. The plans also include an 80 square foot screen porch attached to the proposed addition. The residence does not meet the average front setback and the required side yard setback. The proposed addition will not encroach further into either setback. The property is zoned R1D, single family residential. The subject property is located on the northeast corner of Henry Street and Ferndale Place in the lower Burns Park neighborhood. The existing residence was built in 1927 and is approximately 1,134 square feet in size. The home is non-conforming as it does not meet the required average front yard setback of 25.86 feet along Ferndale Place and the required 3-foot side yard setback. The existing residence is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath home. The addition will provide a first floor bedroom, bathroom, and storage. The owner is also proposing a new curb cut along Ferndale Place to allow access to the attached garage. The existing curb cut and detached garage are to remain. Everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, John, I can see it.
The first slide is the zoning map, and you see the highlighted parcel in the center of the screen, located along Ferndale and Henry Street at the intersection of the northeast corner there. The next slide is the neighborhood map showing surrounding properties and existing conditions. The next slide is the zoomed in aerial photo, and you see where the in a couple slides, you'll see where the proposed addition is going to be off this rear, and this whole side along Ferndale is a front yard, and you can see how the position of this house in relationship to the houses to the north, it's so much further along, and that's why this alteration is required, because the proposed addition will be more forward than the properties to the north. Next slide is the survey that was submitted with the application. The next slide is showing the elevations of the existing property. You see the first floor plan shows a kitchen and a living room. Second is the bedrooms upstairs. You see the elevations here. And this diagram right here shows if the alteration was not approved, the dashed line signifies the buildable area for an addition. The next slide is showing the addition. You see the garage, the bedroom / music room, a bathroom, and a pantry hallway, the proposed screened-in porch, and this is the site plan showing the addition. You see the porch here and the proposed driveway going into the garage. Elevations of the side, you see the garage and the screened-in porch in relationship to the existing house. This is just another site plan that was submitted showing the trees and the street trees, and most likely one of the street trees is going to have to be removed. These are the photos that I took when I conducted my inspection. You see the front facade of the house. Next slide is showing you along Ferndale Place, the relationship of the home to the front setback and the street trees and the existing conditions of the property. Next slide shows the rear of the residence and where the proposed addition will be. This is the back portion of the property and the existing driveway and existing single-car detached garage. This is the direct properties to the north. You see that this is the adjacent neighbor. This is the existing garage and the relationship to the garage and the properties to the north. And this is looking from Ferndale Place directly to the backyard and the side of the house. And this is the subject street tree that will most likely require removal once if the curb cut is permitted, approved, and installed. That concludes my presentation, and I will take any questions at this time.
Thank you, John. Any questions, Dave?
Is the fence, the existing fence there along Ferndale, is that compliant with our fence code? It's an opaque fence. I think it's 4 feet high, I think.
It is not.
I mean, there's the,
It's old and non-conforming, though. I can tell you that much.
okay.
So since this is all on the front yard, that would have to be 4 feet tall maximum and 50% opaque. But I can assure you that that is more than likely non-conforming, as it's probably been there for 20 plus years.
Can we make bringing that into compliance part of if we are going to approve this alteration? Or is that, well, I'll ask the homeowner what they're prepared to do.
Yeah, that's also something that can be probably bundled in with the motion.
Any other questions for John? Yes, Julia.
I'm confused. The garage that's there is going to stay?
That was what the architect has informed me of, that they plan on keeping it, correct.
So they'll have 2 curb cuts for their property.
In order to have 2 curb cuts, you need a minimum of 101 feet of road frontage, and this property has 120.
Okay.
Any other questions for John? All right, if the petitioner is ready, you may begin. You'll have 5 minutes to speak.
You're muted.
You're on mute, sir.
That was my good stuff. Good evening. My name is Joe Phillips. Thank you for being here tonight. I certainly appreciate it. I'm here tonight representing Mary George, who's also present on the video. As you can see from the plan, the intent is to, like many additions that I've done in probably the last 10 years, for a first floor bedroom. More and more owners are finding that they move into an area, they love it, and they find that it's going to be difficult for them to go from the main floor up to the second floor. The addition is really stemmed around that and probably just aging in place in general. The intention is to have a bedroom that would be currently used or immediately used as a music room. Currently, there is a grand piano in the existing living room that would move back there so that she could regain the living room space. She loves music, plays the piano, and that will just give her more space in the meantime. Then when it becomes time to perhaps not use the upstairs bedroom, it would be set up as a bedroom, which you can see obviously from the plan. So the intention is to have about a 21.5 foot deep garage. It really is a 1-car garage as opposed to a 1.5, which it kind of looks like by size. It's only about 15 feet wide, but there is a door that goes into the rear of the existing house that enters the stairway that takes you a couple steps up to the main floor or takes you down to the basement. So that area there needs to be kept open. The pantry area there inside right now, probably couldn't see on the photos or didn't recognize. Her pantry is an addition that was connected to the outside of her house like a doghouse. It's probably about 5 feet wide and about 1.5 feet deep, and that was added on to provide a pantry for the home, which never had one. In addition to the main structure that's proposed, it was suggested that perhaps we have a screened-in porch in the back so she can obviously sit back there, enjoy the backyard. The house currently is set up like most older homes were. The view was out the front or out the side, and the bedrooms were in the back, and there was no view to the backyard or appreciation for the backyard. This brings it more into, I think, what most modern homes would have, some view out the back that you could enjoy your backyard. The intention for the garage is to maintain it for storage. Right now, we couldn't really fit a garbage cans, a lawnmower, snow blower in that single car garage. So the real functional purpose of it is just for storage. We also thought that it would continue to be a screen for the neighbor. And there was one photo in the package that you got. I'm not sure if you all have it in front of you, the one that showed the 4 photos. The one photo, number 4, says it's a view from the neighboring property with the approximate location of the corner of the house. So if the house is built at that corner, you can see how much of the front yard of her home you would see. So it acts as a screen right now. In relationship to the fence, I would just ask, is the height of the fence and opacity of the fence the result that it's close to the property line? Or if it pulled back, and obviously we wouldn't need it in front of the addition, but if it started at the corner of the addition and went back in line with the house, could that be a fence similar to what's installed? I'm not aware of the ordinance. So I don't need the answer now, but that's just my thoughts and presentation, unless there's any questions. And Mary, I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to say.
No.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for the petitioner? Todd, yes.
Yes, just to be clear, Mr. Phillips, this is not going to result in any further encroachment into any of the setbacks. That's correct, right?
That's correct. It
Thank you.
particularly lines right up with the existing house and goes straight back.
Thank you, sir.
Dave?
For what, I think the opacity of the fence is the main issue with the current zoning, but you could meet with our planning people and work that out. I'm looking at the south elevation on the plans. And is that the front of the house, the existing front?
The south elevation is actually mislabeled. That is the north elevation. I apologize.
Because it looks like the north elevation is actually, so the south elevation is from Henry Street, right?
The south elevation faces Henry Street, correct. And on the existing conditions drawings, it's been mislabeled where it says south. It is in fact the north elevation.
Okay, so then the one that's north, labeled north elevation, is that facing from Henry Street?
The one on sheet number PD1?
Yes.
No, that is the rear elevation facing the backyard.
So that's facing from the backyard.
Correct.
And this EC1 is the existing south.
Correct.
It's not the, okay. So there isn't anything here showing, you're not doing anything to the front of the house.
That's correct. You will not see the addition at all from the front of the home.
Okay, that was my primary question.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, seeing none, we will open it up for public comment. If there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now. Once you've called in, please raise your hand and wait to be called on by city staff. While we wait, I will note that we received 2 emails, it seems, from Diana Wright. The first didn't really state a position, but noted several items of concern. And then there was a follow-up email on Friday, January 22nd, that says, based on the drawings that she's reviewed, that she has no concerns with the requested alteration.
I will also comment that Ms. Wright and I have had communication, and all of her questions have been answered, and she said she had no opposition to the project. Also, I believe Kristen has found, I think there may be a possible variance from 1974 for this fence. So I can't access my on base right now to look that up, but I will after this meeting, and I'll notify the homeowner if there has been a variance granted for that fence.
No callers.
All right, thank you. With that, we are in discussion. Chris.
Trying to unmute there. Okay, so I read in some of the questions there was a procedure that the homeowner goes through for existing canopy removal. And what happens with that? Does that just sort of go into a city bank of canopy, or does that have to be replaced on site somehow? Or how does that, what's the upshot of the charge for canopy removal?
That's a question for me, Chris?
Yes, I'm sorry.
So on the questions that I answered, that was the answer was from Urban Forestry. And did you see that response from Urban Forestry?
You know, I read through it, but it was 10 days ago or so, or whenever it was when it first came. But that
I know that there would be, if Urban Forestry requires the canopy tree loss fee, it's going to be approximately $4,070. I am not sure where those funds go. I don't want to put my city council member on the spot, but she can possibly know, because I know this was something that was approved by city council.
I would guess they go to the Elizabeth Dean Fund.
I have no idea where the money goes.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that either.
I guess if they're gonna remove something there, are they gonna be required to put anything back there?
That's going to be something that urban forestry is going to have to address, and that's not part of this petition tonight because
Okay,
zoning, the curb cut meets the zoning requirements.
Okay.
I forwarded it to the engineering department. It meets the engineering department's requirements. Then they forwarded it to transportation, and transportation also said they don't have any issues with the proposed curb cut.
that's
And then
fine.
the urban forestry commented about that, and that was in that those answers.
No, that's all good. It's beyond our purview. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I'm wasting time. Thank you.
Hey.
Yes.
Again, this is just needs to meet more simple standards because it's an alteration to a non-conforming structure, and because of the corner lot and the way this front setback off of Ferndale really takes away more than half of that backyard, it really creates a situation that makes any sort of an addition back there that would impossible or very, very difficult without getting meeting the getting closer to than would be allowed by the existing setback there. I would hope, I'm not sure, but we've had some communications about this tree removal for the curb cut, and I would hope that the owner is aware that there will be a fee for removing that tree to the city, and that they're prepared to meet that fee or to mitigate if the urban foresters allow mitigation in lieu of the fee. I'm not sure, but that's not for our board. I'll vote for this as an alteration. I would be more hard pressed to, but possibly be able to grant it as a full variance, but I can support it as an alteration.
Any further discussion, or is someone ready with a motion? Dave, thank you.
ZBA 20-029, 1301 Henry Street. Alteration to a non-conforming structure. The Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants relief from Section 532(2), alteration to a non-conforming structure to allow a 784 28 by 28 foot and a half and 5 inches square foot addition at the back of the existing residence for a new bedroom, bathroom, pantry, and garage. The addition will not encroach further into the average front setback and the required side yard setback.
You, Dave, do you have support?
Second.
Support from Todd, thank you. Charlotte,
Yes.
Nicole,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Dave,
DeVardi, yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes,
Julia.
Yes.
I also vote yes, the request is granted.
Thank
Moving
you all.
on.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yes, thank you. Moving on to petition ZBA 20-030-2003 Norfolk Avenue. John?
Mark Yezowitz, property owner, is requesting a 2-foot variance from section 5.16.6 accessory uses and structures in order to construct a detached carport in the required 5-foot side yard. The proposed carport will be 10 feet wide and 54 feet 8 inches in length with a 110 square foot attached unfinished storage room. The property is zoned R1C single family residential. The subject property is located on the southeast corner of Suffolk Avenue and Norfolk Avenue in the Dickens neighborhood. The home was built in 1959 and is approximately 1,753 square feet in size. The new detached carport is designed to be large enough to accommodate 2 vehicles and a storage area. The carport has been designed to maintain a 1-inch separation between the 2 structures. The previous carport has been demolished as it was the cause of drainage issues for the residents. The first slide is the zoning map, and you see the highlighted parcel in the center at the corner. Excuse me. We'll go to the next slide. Got the wrong map there. There, sorry about that. The next slide is the neighborhood map showing surrounding properties and existing conditions. You see the highlighted parcel on the corner of Norfolk and Suffolk Avenue, just west of West Stadium Boulevard. The next slide is the zoomed in aerial photo, and you see the the previous attached carport that's now no longer there, and the relationship to that south property line. Next slide is the survey that was submitted with the application. The next slide is the is a document that was submitted with the applicant by the applicant, and you see the in blue. This is the proposed highlighted area where the new carport's to be installed. The next slide is the area of work and the site plan where they're proposing the new carport to be located in the shaded area. It's a little difficult to see on this PowerPoint. The next slide shows the elevations from the left and rear. The next slide shows just another aerial photo of the first floor, and you see the attached storage unit on the right. Elevation photos. This is the right elevation as from the adjacent abutting property. And more, just another roof plan showing the footprint of the proposed carport. Next slides are the photos of my inspection. You see the front of the house, the front facade. Next slide shows the, so you see the survey stakes, existing conditions. The previous carport's been demolished and removed, and you see the relationship to the property to the south, the abutting property. Just another view from that perspective. This is where the proposed carport is to be located, and you see the relationship of the property to the east. Staked out area where the proposed carport is going to be. More area where the proposed carport will be constructed. This is looking from the back of the property out towards Norfolk. These are the photos of the previous carport that was demolished that were submitted by the applicant. And that's looking at the carport with the shed, and that was there previously from the interior of the property. That concludes my presentation, and I can take any questions at this time.
Thank you, John. Any questions? Yes, Chris.
Is the existing pad still there? It looked like you couldn't quite see it because of the snow, but has been raised off of the RAZED off the pad, so the existing pad's still there. And they're building back on that.
I believe that's part of the driveway, and then it ends, and then there was the portion where the storage shed was there. That's been demolished, and all that to the back property line is all natural surface.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for John Todd?
I think Julie has a question too. I've been asking more than my share, so maybe she should go first. See if she has my question.
Thank you. I was just wondering if it changes any legal status with getting the variance, the fact that there previously was a carport there.
So once the structure's been demolished and any new construction, it'll have to meet today's code. So,
Okay.
yeah, so got to meet the 5-foot setback. So that's why they're requesting a 2-foot variance to be 3 feet off the property line.
Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, Julie, you did not ask my question, but how could you possibly know? My reading of this is if he were to build an 8-foot wide carport, he would not have needed to come before us. It's only because he wants one that's 10 feet wide. If he's asking for a 2-foot variance, if you trim 2 feet off the width of the carport, you got 8 feet. He doesn't need a variance at all, right?
That's correct. And I believe that was part of that answer to that response is in the packet with the questions by the applicant. And he addresses that, and I'll let him speak to that. It's got to do with the reduced width of the actual door itself, I believe.
But a carport doesn't have a garage door, right? Garage doors are 8 feet wide. We're talking about a carport, not a garage with a door. But I'll ask the applicant that.
Sure. Is it okay for me to answer now?
Nope, not yet. Sorry, sir.
No problem.
Dave, go ahead.
John, I have a question. If the applicant or petitioner had come to the city and asked for a building permit when the previous carport was still there, if they had come and said, I need a building permit to do some new pad work here for drainage issues and to replace the carport as is with the same size dimensions, would that have needed a variance?
Any new construction.
Or could he just come in and get the building permit for that?
No, any new construction, anything that would be done to that would have to meet that side setback.
Gotcha.
Any other questions for John? All right, now if the petitioner's ready, you have 5 minutes.
Great. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Mark Yesowitz, and I'm the owner for 2003 Norfolk Avenue. We moved in August, and one of the things that really needed to be addressed quickly was the carport and driveway due to drainage issues in the past that were identified in the inspection. So we had the carport taken down and we had the driveway replaced to address those drainage issues. And I was not aware of the rule that the existing structure had to still be in place in order to maintain that setback distance. I think to answer Dave's question that he answered John, or to address that, if the existing carport was still there and we put in the permit, if we left part of that carport in place, I think it would have been approved at that location. Was that not right?
No, that John said that any new construction would need to meet the current code.
Okay.
Even if it was just a replacement.
Okay. As far as the width issue that Todd brought up, there between the footings with the width the way it's designed, with the 5-foot setback, the width available to pull a car into the carport is less than 8 feet, and it's really not really amenable to putting a car in, underneath the carport. A standard garage door is 8 feet wide, and usually you have some room past that, but it's not. It doesn't. It just wouldn't work at that width. So that's why we're asking for the 2-foot variance to increase the width there. I think that addresses everything. But if you have any other questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Todd, yes.
Yes, Mr. Yesowitz, I do have a question following up on why you need the 10 feet. Maybe I'm incorrect, but I understand a carport essentially to be a structure only with a roof supported by piers, that
Yes.
there are no walls on the carport. Is that correct?
There would be one wall on the south side of the carport that we were planning to do, and that house is on the north side. Yes.
So there'd be a wall, if you pulled your car in, there would be a wall on the driver's side and there would be a wall on the passenger side.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have to have the wall on the passenger side?
We don't. No, it's the property line for the neighbor's house. It butts up against their wall. If you look back at the pictures that John took, it's pretty close to. The houses are pretty close together.
Yep.
And also there's a retaining wall on that side. So even with without the wall of the carport, there's still sort of like a limitation on that side.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, seeing none, if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now. Once you've called in, please raise your hand and wait to be called on by city staff.
No callers.
All right, thank you, Kristen. We are in discussion. Dave.
Could I ask one quick question of John again? If they did the open carport without the wall and a roof that went into that setback area, but just the roof, not the piers, they wouldn't need a variance for that, would they?
So yeah, the support structure will have to meet the setback. Roofs and overhangs are allowed to project 2 feet into a setback.
Which would give him the roof covering that he needs. Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah, picking up on what Dave said in my question and answer with the applicant, I'm just not convinced that they actually need a 10-foot carport. And this isn't just a simple alteration, but they have to meet our 5 criteria. And I think he could have a roof to keep snow off the car, but he doesn't need a wall on the passenger side. It would be, I understand where if I were building one, I would want one, it would be nicer, but he's got a constrained space, and given the criteria that we have to look at, I don't really think that it's a necessity. I'm not really convinced. So at this point, I mean, my colleagues may have some other comments, but I'm leaning toward voting against this one.
Any other comments or discussion? Julia, yes.
Well, I'm just wondering if someone's leaning yes, if they could kind of explain to me why, because I'm not hearing the criteria met either.
All right, any other discussion or comments? If not, we're ready for a motion.
I'll just state the reason for I'm going to vote against this. I feel a carport could be put in there and be the minimum required to provide his carport and not have to come for a variance. So I don't think he needs the variance to do what he needs to do. I think it's merely to create a wall there. So I'm going to vote against this.
All right, we're ready for a motion.
I'm prepared to make the motion.
Thank you, Dave.
ZBA 20-030, 2003 Norfolk Avenue. Variance. Based on the following findings and in accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variance from Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, Section 5:16(6), accessory structure and uses. A variance of 2 feet to allow a detached carport in the 5-foot side yard. The proposed carport will be 10 feet wide and 54 feet and 8 inches in length with 110 square foot attached storage room.
Thank you, Dave. Do you have support? Support from Nicole?
I'll support.
Thank you. Elizabeth,
No.
Julia,
No.
Todd.
No.
I also vote no. Nicole,
No.
Charlotte,
No.
Chris,
No.
Mike,
No.
Dave.
Vardy, no.
The request is denied. We are just past the 7:30 mark, so I propose that before we move forward, we take a quick 5-minute break to stretch and get some water and move around a little bit, and then we'll resume back with our next petition. So,
I'll support.
all right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are on a 5-minute break. See everyone back here in a few minutes. to petition ZBA 20-032, 400 South Maple Road. John?
Okay. Mary Ellen Madari, representative of Kroger, is requesting a 78.4 square foot variance from section 5.24.5 subsection B1, area of permanent signs. Applicant is proposing 278.4 square feet of signage exceeding the allowable 200 square foot of signage. The sign package is to include a new Kroger and pharmacy sign and relocation of the existing Starbucks sign. The property is zoned C3 Fringe Commercial District. The existing Kroger grocery store received site plan approval in December of 1996 and completed construction in 1998. The commercial property is located on the west side of South Maple Road and south of the Westgate Shopping Center. The proposed new Kroger image wall sign is 192.9 square feet in size. The new pharmacy sign is 34.8 square feet, and the existing Starbucks sign to be relocated is 50.7 square feet. You'll turn your attention to the PowerPoint monitor. The first slide is the zoning map, and you see the subject property highlighted in yellow in the center of the screen. The next slide is the neighborhood map showing surrounding properties and existing conditions. The next slide is the zoomed in aerial photo of the property. I think everyone's probably familiar with the site. The next slide is the survey that was submitted with the application. This is the proposed elevation. You see the new Kroger sign right where my cursor is, the pharmacy being relocated to the other side of the storefront, and the Starbucks sign, which is currently to the right side, all the way to the other side of the building elevation. These are the conceptual sign drawings that were submitted with the application by the applicant. You see the Kroger sign. When the sign ordinance, the new sign ordinance came into effect last month, December 21st, 2020, the area of a sign is calculated by the furthest extent of a sign. So the entire sign is being boxed in. The next slide is showing the pharmacy conceptual sign. And the next slide is the Starbucks sign. These are the pictures that I took when I conducted my investigation or inspection at the property. You see the existing Kroger and Starbucks signs on the west elevation of the store. Just would be east. This is the Kroger sign that's existing right now. And that's the Starbucks sign that's existing. This is the elevation where the pharmacy sign will go and the Starbucks to the left of it. This is showing the overall front elevation of the store. That concludes my presentation, and I'll take any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, John. Any questions for staff? Todd?
Maybe I missed it. I apologize. Do you have a picture of what this new sign will look like on the building,
Yes.
rather than separate from the building? Is there a computer generated version of what it's going to look like?
Right there. Can you see that?
Okay. No, I got that. It's just, it's not on, they didn't take an existing photograph and put the new sign on the existing building. We don't have that.
Just elevation drawing.
Okay. I do have one more question. Do you know when Kroger started working on this sign? Or are they also caught because of the new signing ordinance? Is this a last minute thing, or what did they address that at all?
I will leave that up to the applicant.
Okay.
Dave?
John, is this sign any larger than their existing sign?
The applicants had informed me that the body of the new proposed Kroger is smaller than the existing, but it's the arched K and G that is now making the sign larger by calculating the area of the entire box or when you draw a rectangle around the entire perimeter of the sign, you have to take in the entire area, the furthest extent of the sign. It makes the area calculation larger.
And then there is no pharmacy sign now, is that correct? I didn't see one when I was there today.
I believe it's already, when I was out there at the site, they already have removed it and it's no longer up.
But there used to be a pharmacy sign?
I think there was, but now they're going to put a new one up and relocate it to the other side.
Any other questions for John? Yes, Todd.
Sorry, I guess I'm a question man tonight. John, are they literally taking the old Kroger letter size and putting it in a new spot?
No, there's going to be a brand new sign.
Correct. But will the letters be the same? I realize the sign is calculated as bigger, but are the letters in the old sign going to be the same size in the proposed new sign?
They informed me that the body of the sign, minus the arches, is actually smaller than the existing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? Yes, Elizabeth.
So it's because those curved pieces pokes out so far, and I presume that when the sign ordinance was drafted, this was contemplated that some signs are shaped letters, not solid rectangles. I mean, do we really, I assume we're not, if I understand this correctly, we're not calculating the surface area of each individual letter. We're actually measuring the dimensions of how far it pokes out.
Correct. Now the ordinance states that the sign area takes in the furthest extent of a sign when you rectangle in the entire sign surface.
Okay.
So previously, we may have calculated it by just doing the body, or you could take 10% of the spacing. You could remove that from the calculation, and now it's just a straight. You box in the entire sign, and that's your total.
Have there been any? I don't recall one in the last 2 years, but has there been? Have we talked about a sign that was subject to this kind of penalty for sort of jutting out, like not being a really imposing relative like each square inch, but just jutting out a distance? Have we talked about this at all in a previous?
No, this is, you mean a previous ZBA?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand, like, if this is a relatively new issue. Was this just relative to the change in December, or has this been the?
Correct.
Oh, it is. It's just new to December.
Correct.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Wow. Okay, thanks.
Other questions for John? Dave, did you have another one?
Yeah, could you put up the picture of the existing front? I just want to see how different this logo is from the old one.
It looks to me like it's the
It
same
looks
sign.
exactly the same. I'll ask the people. I mean, it's definitely the design of the lettering is the same.
I think the arches are just larger. They're more of an arch or more of a swoosh. If you look at that right there, see how, as opposed to.
I think they're the same. They're half circles.
We'll ask the petitioner.
Any other questions for staff? All right, if the petitioner is ready, you have 5 minutes. comments?
Without a camera, do they know that they're muted?
Oh, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you very much. Yes, so like John was saying, the letters themselves are smaller, but it's because of the swoosh on the letters that it's taking it over the limited size. Terry Holt is also here from Cummings Sign. This is her project, so I'm sure she would be able to answer any questions.
Yes, thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate everything that you're doing for the city. As far as the font and the style of the Kroger, the existing letter set that's on the building is actually a taller, skinnier, more condensed version than the newer stroke for Kroger. So that's what's made it span out a little bit larger. They've spaced the letters further apart in between each one. And the stroke of the K and the G also gave it that extended version. If you look at the actual sizing, if John can pull that back up, the cut sheet dimension of the existing sign that's on the building, we are at a 96-inch tall by 11-foot, 10-inch wide on the current version. And the new one is only 82 inches tall at 10-foot, 4.5 inches wide. But due to the new ordinance, it has caused us to be just slightly over, I think, by 78 square feet. We are just re-imaging. We're considering this as a maintenance type, giving it a new LED sign and a new look. The other issue that we have there is that Kroger currently does not have any ground signs, monuments, or pylons. So this is the only visibility for Kroger, and we just want to clean up the store and make it look more presentable. By centering it over the store also brings customers to the storefront.
I have a question with this packet.
Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
There's this this in the packet with this additional type, fresh for everyone. Is that part of the sign that's going to go on the front of the building?
No, sir, not at all. That will not be on the building anywhere.
Just the Kroger. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Todd, yes.
Yes, Ms. Holt, how long has this sign been in the works? And I'm asking my question in particular because we had an applicant earlier tonight that had been working for 2 years on a very long process, and then the city's ordinance changed at the very end of December. And they were like, whoops. So I'm wanting to know how long has this been going on with Kroger?
I'm not sure when Kroger started their particular portion of the construction. We started working with them the first week of October. We inquired the services of Northern to get a survey of the existing signage for our presentation package, and application, I believe we started around the first week of November. By the time we got Kroger's landlord approval and authorization letters and everything to be able to make the submission, it was, I think, the second week of November. And then throughout that process, we've been working with John, who has been great to help us through getting this variance application.
So if I understand you correctly, the application was submitted in November.
I believe that's correct. Mary Ellen could attest to that, but my notes say probably we received the LOA and information on November 10th. So I would say that that week was probably our first submission.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, seeing none, if there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now and raise your hand. Staff will call on you based on the last 3 digits of your phone number. While we wait, I will note I did not see any communication in our packet regarding this petition.
No callers.
All right, with that, we are in discussion. I will say really quickly, This is kind of an easy one for me. Having dealt with similar situations in the past in my professional life, I know how sign area can be calculated differently from place to place. I think in this case, the style of the letters and the angle of the swoops is kind of throwing off the calculation a little bit. I think the majority of the sign area that's over the limit is probably, in all reality, just empty space and not actual signage. So that leads me to be kind of in favor of approving this request. But if anyone else wishes to speak, yes, Elizabeth.
I was going to agree with you. And the reason I was asking about, well, I'm just imagining this situation happening a lot. I can think of a lot of situations where a sign is just letters and poking out, and it makes me wonder if we're going to have a lot more hearings like this just based on having redrafted the ordinance to measure square footage in this way. Yeah, this makes logical sense to me. I mean, in this particular location, besides, this is not an opposing sign, not at all. So I don't have a problem supporting this at all. I'm actually like, it raises concerns for me about how we drafted the sign ordinance, actually. Thanks.
Dave, go ahead.
Easy for me to support this, not only because this is the Kroger I shop at, but they don't have a monument sign. There's very modest signage on the site. And I've seen so many people come in and try to maximize monument sign plus a high podium sign plus other signs. And this, to me, it's simple. One Kroger ID sign, one pharmacy sign, one Starbucks sign, not imposing and not overdoing it. I'll vote yes.
Charlotte.
I had a question for John, if that's okay. If they got their application in before the sign ordinance change, is there no provision for, I guess, they're falling under the old ordinance, or is that not correct?
When it would have been reviewed and permitted. And so I am looking at it, it looks like they submitted it on November 20th. So I think they submitted it prior to the deadline. Or prior to the sign ordinance being approved. But, so that's all, I'm not, it didn't come across my desk until after the sign ordinance was approved.
I'm prepared to make a motion unless other people want to speak.
Did anyone else have a comment? Julia.
Well, I'm kind of concerned, and I think more so after Elizabeth's comments, that if this was just passed by City Council, presumably City Council put some thought into it, and I'm not hearing any particular hardship or criteria why it needs an exemption from the law.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with Dave on this, in the fact that this is also my Kroger, although I've never seen Dave there. But yeah, I agree with the fact that this is the location of these signs and this sign well off the street. They're not, I mean, there's no homes right here. It's barely over. This is pretty de minimis for me. So the fact that they don't have a monument sign on the street, this is it. This is one I'm going to vote in favor of.
Todd.
You know, picking up a little bit, I think, on Julia's comment or concern, I don't think, as I'm looking at this, it's not so much a hardship as I have, perhaps saying it incorrectly, a pipeline problem. I mean, they put in their application before the ordinance was changed. And I don't know, not being the city's attorney, what the precise rule is, but it would seem to me that they prepared their package and the expectation was they were going to be evaluated under the old sign ordinance. And nothing on you, John. You didn't get it in your desk until after the new ordinance came into effect. But from the applicant's point of view, they did everything right. It is going to be a smaller sign, no problem. Then wham, now we have a new signage ordinance. So I'm willing to give somebody a break on this. And I agree with everything else that everybody said about it being a smaller sign, not a big deal. They're not coming in with something that looks like out of Las Vegas on the Strip. This is a very modest, but I just have a pipeline problem is with the church applicant we had. They did everything, the ordinance changed, boom, they had their application in. And I'm looking at this as sort of a situation of equity, that they expected a certain set of rules to apply to them, and then the rules got changed after they submitted all the paperwork. I don't know what the precise legal ruling is or what the ordinance says, but given all that, I'm prepared to vote in favor of this tonight.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Dave.
ZBA 20-032, 400 South Maple Road. Variance. Based on the following findings and in accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variance from Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, Section 524(5)(b)(1), Area of Permanent Signs. A variance of 78.4 square feet to allow three new wall signs that total 278.4 square feet, exceeding the allowable 200 square feet.
Second.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Todd. Elizabeth,
Yes.
Julia,
No.
Dave.
Yes, DeVarty, yes.
I also vote yes. Mike,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Nicole,
Yes.
Charlotte. Charlotte?
Sorry, I'm having internet connection issues, but yes, I vote yes.
Okay, thank you. The request is granted.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to petition ZBA 20-031, 614 South Ashley Street. John?
Actually, I'm going to turn these next 4 petitions over to Chris Chang. They are site plan development petitions, and he'll be going over the next 4.
All right, thank you, John. Welcome, Chris.
We'll give Chris a moment to get set up here.
Hello, everyone. I am Chris Chang. I'm a city planner, and this is a little unorthodox. I will go through my presentation, but I also worked on the sign ordinance. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on I think what happened with Kroger. It'll be real quick. With the sign ordinance, we wanted to simplify the calculations. So we simply made it length times width. So we're going to take the length of that Kroger sign times the width. In this case, they got caught up because a K and a G are larger than what's normal, and we had to box it in. We used to have a section in sign code that would allow, if it was more than 10% error, we would subtract it out. So that previous Kroger sign, it would have met. But we also want to prevent, let's say that Kroger sign came in and the K was extremely large and the G was extremely large. And then all of a sudden, and we can take 10% out, it would have made for an extremely large Kroger sign. So just a little bit of background on the sign. We used to have a 10% provision. We took it out for simplicity reasons and how to calculate. So if you have questions on that, I'm happy to answer them, but I'm happy to also move on to the actual ZBA applications that are going through site plan process on to city council.
Let's
I just want to say one quick thing too. As I was looking over in city council, they approved it before December 21st. It took effect 10 days after. And so once Kroger submitted, there was holidays and it didn't get put into the system until after December 4th. And when I was reviewing it, it was actually almost concurrent at the same time this new sign ordinance was approved and when this application came across my desk. And that's why I reviewed it under the new sign ordinance, because it was almost seamless between the two events taking place.
Thank you for the insight.
And if you have any sign questions, feel free to call the planning officer or myself, and we'll try to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Chris.
Great. Okay. Now, can everyone see the slide presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So the first presentation is for 614 South Ashley. It's ZBA 20-031. And the subject site is located off from Ashley Street on the west side. It is zone C2B, which is Business Service District. And it has to the rear, which is to the west, R2A, which is a two-family residential district. As you can see from the aerial, it's mostly residential uses along this street. This one in particular is used as a general office space. But what's kicking this in to come to the Zoning Board of Appeals is the way the code is written, that anything that is zone C2B and is adjacent to either zoned residential or used as residential is required to have conflicting land use buffers. So the property to the north, to the south, and of course the one to the west are all used as residential. So conflicting land use buffers are required for this proposal. So the orange block, or at least the outlined orange area, that's the existing home. The petitioner would like to add about a 300 square foot second story addition onto this house, which I call it a house, but it is currently used as office space. This will be used as a residence. It's about 300 square feet, it's elevated, and that's the red section. And it will also have an elevated deck with parking located below, and we'll look at that when we get to the elevations. But if you look at my cursor, the issues are that you need to have a 15-foot wide conflicting land use buffer on the south property line. That's where the shared driveway is located. Inside of that 15-foot wide grass strip, you're required to have trees every 15 feet and also a continuous screen that can be used as, that's 4 feet tall, that's either shrubs, fencing, anything to use as screening. It cannot be done with the shared driveway to the residents to the south. As you can see to the west, they do have a little strip right there that they are proposing to meet the landscaping requirements. They have an existing fence, and we'll see that in the pictures. So they are requesting a variance from the conflicting land use buffer width of approximately 9 feet. To the north, because it is used as residential, they need another 15-foot wide strip with trees and a low-lying vegetative screen that's at least 4 feet high. And again, they can't meet it. This lot is approximately 39 feet wide. So even if they could meet it, if they took 15 feet and 15 feet, which was for the conflicting land use buffer, they'd have about a 9-foot wide building envelope to build in. So we can move a little further. This is a view from Ashley Street looking west. It's a little, the subject house is behind the tree. You can see the shared driveway to the south, that's residential. And then to the north, that's another residential use. This is the rear yard looking north. This is the subject house. It's got the mansard roof. This is where the addition will be proposed with the parking below. What I had previously mentioned, looking west, they at least have a fence up that meets part of the conflicting land use buffer screening from the residential uses to the west. And here you can see how narrow it is between the subject site and the house to the north. And that's where they're going to ask for about an 11-foot wide variance from the conflicting land use buffer. And again, these pictures are kind of blown up, but again, we're looking from the north yard looking east. So that's out towards Ashley, or as you can see in the background, Main Street. And then over here is where a blown up picture of where the addition is going to be located with the parking below. And it should also be noted that this site is located in the Old West Side Historic District. So you're looking at the proposed south elevation. I'm going to circle in kind of where the 300 square foot addition is and where the deck is. So this was approved back in November by the Historic District. Again, here's a view from the north elevation, looking at the 300 square foot addition. I think it does meet the parking requirements. And I'm here for any questions you may have. I'm just looking over my notes to see if I've missed anything as far as, oh, I do want to mention one other thing. Traditionally, because this is zoned in a commercial district, it has to go on to the Planning Commission for approval. We take this one out of order because we didn't want the petitioner to go through site plan, go through the whole process, and then get denied at the ZBA, because this cannot move forward without all those variances being granted around the perimeter of this site for conflicting land use buffers. So this is a little unorthodox that we are taking it to the ZBA first, then it will be moved on to the Planning Commission for review and approval. And I am open to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions? Dave?
Does this meet all the setback requirements?
Yes, it's zone C2B. C2B zoning district does not have any side setbacks. No side setbacks because it's even though it's adjacent to residential, it's adjacent to residential uses, it is not zoned residential.
And I had another question. Like 25 years ago, when I was on the DDA, the Downtown Development Authority, I thought we were getting rid of C2B, or was it just C2A that we were getting rid of?
I don't know about 25 years ago. I've been with the city for quite some time. I can tell you we do have C2B districts. I know like the C1AR and the C1, I think we
the C1AR.
The D1 and the D2.
Yeah, that C1AR is what we got rid of. And then parking requirements. I'm assuming this meets all the parking requirements, and it looked to me when I was there that it actually exceeded the parking requirements.
No, it's right on. It's required to have 3 parking spaces, 2 for the general office and 1 for the residential.
Gotcha.
So it's at 3.
Okay.
Other questions for Chris? Todd?
Chris, simplifying this a little bit, this presents itself mostly as residential, and the building is being used as an office, but now we're going to add a residential component to it. Did I say that correctly?
That is correct.
Okay.
And if I can probably even elaborate that on a little bit, if the uses at some point in the future to the south or the north, they're currently used as residential. If for whatever reason they turn those into offices, office type use or commercial type use, which would be permitted in the C2B, they wouldn't need these conflicting land use buffers. What's driving this is that the uses are residential to the north and the south.
Got it. Good. Thank you. Well said. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Chris? Yes, Chris.
The reason why even though everything there is C2B, correct? Either side?
Well, to the north and the south, it's C2B. To the west, it is R2A, and they would be required to have that conflicting land use buffer there. That's where they would have to, and they're trying to meet it with the trees and the fence, but they don't meet the width.
All right. But in C2B, residential gets some kind of extra dispensation if that's the use? Is that what I'm catching? Because they're both C2B.
Right.
They're C2B. I mean, why? I don't understand why, if the use changes, that's sort of up to the user. They're going to be subject to the zoning as such, aren't they? Why are they getting special dispensation on a buffer if the use is residential, but yet it's C2B? Now, either side, not the back.
Right. So the purpose, I'm going to speculate, the purpose when they wrote that code is typically you want to screen from residential uses. You want to put up some type of landscaping there. Typically in a C2B, you are not adjacent to residential uses. This is kind of a special case. In this case, because it is zone C2B and both of the sites are zone C2B to the north and the south, but they're used residential and the code says residential, they have to screen because it's used as residential uses.
I guess that's very confusing. I mean, and I'm walking through this right now as a planning master's student. And I mean, the uses, you know, you're allowed certain uses beyond what the zoning is, but the zoning is still the zoning. So I don't know why, just because somebody wants to use it as a residence, they are given special dispensation beyond what the zoning is. I mean, it's C2B. You're subject to C2B, seems to me. But I guess I don't understand what this special dispensation is. I mean, if you buy a house and you want to use it as residential, but it's going to be in C2B, you're subject to C2B. I mean, it's like that in other zones. This confuses me.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm explaining it well enough, other than it doesn't happen often, because in the C2B, you're typically using it as for office or commercial space. In this case, the neighbors are using it as residential to the north and to the south. They could convert those in the future to an office or retail type use if they met the parking requirements, but that's not the way they're being used today. So that's why they have to come in and get the variances from the conflicting land use buffer.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Dave.
Does you're working with the site planning on this? The rear abuts property that is zoned residential, that will stay residential. Will they be buffering there?
Yes, so they would be required to have a 30-foot setback, which they're meeting. But they also are going to, they can and will be planting trees, as you can see, along the west property line, along with the existing fence there to meet the screening requirements.
Okay.
Let me see, right here, you can see the fence looking west. That existing fence can be used. They're going to have to plant some trees in there also, but they are looking for a variance because they can't make the 15-foot width right there. And that's existing pavement right there that they're going to be used, they'll be using for the required parking.
So even there, they won't be able to meet the buffering, even though that's residential and will stay residential behind them.
Correct. They're looking for just a width variance on that portion of the site.
I'm not understanding a width variance. So
the conflicting land use buffers are a minimum of 15 foot wide. So you need to have 15 feet wide on the south, the west, and the north.
Right.
They cannot, and if you look at the layout of the house, it's a 39-foot wide lot.
Right, I understand that, but I'm looking at the west where it abuts residential zoning.
Correct.
That will stay residential, that will always be conflicting land use, if we think of that as
correct.
So I'm wondering, are they going to be site planning buffering there that meets our buffering code for C2B, for that mitigation of competing uses? Or
And so when it does come in for the site plan review, it will get a more detailed review. And my initial review with the city forester on this one is, yes, they can meet the trees that go there. Yes, they've shown that they've got a fence and can put the screening up there. They're asking on the west side, though, to be reduced from 15 feet down to I believe, 6 feet wide. So they don't meet that 15-foot wide width on that side of the site.
And it looks like, Chris, if I'm looking at this correctly, it's because there's existing pavement there.
That's correct.
It appears that pavement goes on to the parcel to the south too, that it crosses the property line. So
I'm
at least
looking,
on
trying
the
to,
aerial.
let's go back. Let's see if the aerial, let's see if it, I think you can see kind of you can see the gap along the west side there, that is not pavement. So they're using the existing pavement there.
Todd.
Yes, Chris. So we're only addressing the ZBA here at the ZBA. We're only addressing the variances on the edges. that nothing about the new residential apartment being added to the existing structure is relevant to our decision today. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's all for
Okay.
conflicting land use buffer widths
Okay, good.
and
Thank you.
landscaping.
Okay, well, that makes the job simpler. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
So
Yes, Julia, go ahead.
I'm confused why they don't, if it's conflicting use now on the north and south, why don't they have to have the buffer now?
The reason that's triggering this is they have to site plan the addition because the addition is located in the C2B zoning district. If this were in a residential zoning district, they may not even be in front of you. What's really triggering this is that it's a C2B zone and they're adding a residential unit. So it has to be site planned by code.
Dave.
Has the planning department staff looked at some of these transitional areas between residential and downtown to rezone them one way or the other, like to rezone it to residential? So this is such a small block. I know that Washtenaw Dairy is there at the northern end of that block, but couldn't that all the rest of it just be rezoned to residential?
The staff actually had a request to rezone this area back to residential, but there were a lot of issues when you talk with the neighbors. Some didn't want to go to residential because the commercial allows you more uses. And in fact, if we downzoned it back to residential, it may even make some of them put the lots into non-conformance. It wouldn't meet some of the R2, R1 zoning districts. It might not meet the lot width. So we abandoned that. So it was looked at, it was explored, but it really went nowhere.
I have to say, my trouble with this isn't so much the north and south buffers, but the buffer to the west, because I see this as an issue all along that block. And developers could come in and want to do things on these things. And once we give in on the buffer on one parcel, how can we not give in on the other parcels? I'm just putting that out there, and I'll grapple with that. Maybe people can argue that with me or convince me otherwise, but I have an issue with that buffer on the west. Giving up on that.
Are there any other questions for staff? Yes, Nicole.
Can you remind me, are 3 parking spots there now?
Yes.
Thank you.
And if I may, and this may be one for the petitioner, I understand member DeVarty's concern that maybe that's not the minimum necessary. Maybe they could make that 10 feet. Maybe with the petitioner, we could ask, what if we turned one of those parking spaces into a small car parking spot? Maybe that saves us 2 feet. We'd have to get an exact dimension. Maybe. I can't tell you that without dimensions of that to see if we can pull back some of that existing pavement.
All right, any other questions? All right, if the petitioner is ready, you may begin your presentation. You'll have 5 minutes.
Is Joe Maynard online?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Joe.
That's okay, no problem. This is Joe Maynard from Washtenaw Engineering. We're the site engineers for the project. Chris, I got to thank you for doing such a great job of explaining all of this. So I'll forgo a lot of the duplicate stuff that I was originally going to mention here and kind of dive into some of your questions here. First of all, it sounds like the rear yard buffer is kind of the key. So as you may know from the photographs, that rear yard actually has asphalt paving back there now. It also has some brick pavers, which probably used to be a sidewalk at one time. It's been there for a really long time. So our intent here was to provide the required trees and shrubs and screening that's required by code in this area. It's just a matter of if we take the full 15 feet, we're actually going to lose one of our required parking spaces and one of the needed parking spaces in this space. I'm not sure. We didn't look at putting a compact car here. We'd have to talk to the owner. I think she's online here about the type of cars that they drive, whether that would work or not. We'd hate to put them in a situation where they'd have to go out and purchase a new car just to fit in their parking lot. So that's kind of the key there is, we've got one really big existing tree, which we really don't want to plant a lot underneath because it will impact those root zones. And then on the, let me pull up my plan here. On the north side there, again, we've tried to complete all of the required plantings in that area, select shrubs that are skinnier, that'll fit in those zones, that'll work with the environment. And then that'll provide the proper screening needed for those areas. So yeah, really we're looking for just the depth of that rear parking space, rear buffer space to be reduced some.
I've got a question.
Yes, Steve.
Could we meet your needs just because we can also give a parking variance? We've had many petitioners come and ask for a parking variance. In fact, some in this neighborhood that for apartment uses that need a certain number of parking spaces for the number of apartments. And at the same time, they're turning them into 6-bedroom units. They're asking for a variance. They're going from 3-bedroom units to 6-bedroom units, and they want a parking variance. And we've granted some of them. Why not just ask us for one space parking variance and then give us the buffer zone? Because you are putting this, and it's just setting the precedent on this entire block of C2B that butts up against residential is problematic.
Can I answer that question?
Sure.
My name is Lynette Williams, and I'm the designer who's helping or who's working with the owners of the building. And the building is actually owned by there are two principals to the business that's owned. One lives out of town and one lives in town. The person who lives in town is regularly there every day and she parks there. The additional owner lives in Colorado and he's in town pre-COVID once a month. So he's also parking there. And so if we were to ask for a variance to take away a parking spot, then we are making it so that any clients or people who are coming to do business with this office won't have a place to park.
Now, there are on-street parking places for an hour to 2-hour parking, so clients would have space, and they're not all-day parking spaces. Because I parked in one of those spaces today when I walked that site. So there are
the metered ones, yeah.
So to me, a client coming just for an hour is, I don't see the problem there so much as if it's a residential unit and people are living there and storing cars is a greater problem to me for accommodating parking. So anyway, I can do this in the argumentative, when we're talking about the motion.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, seeing none, if there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now. Once you've called in, raise your hand and staff will call on you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. I will note I did not see any communication in our packet regarding this petition.
No callers.
Thank you, Kristen. We are in discussion. I can say really quickly, I guess to speak a little bit, Dave, to your idea, I personally would rather grant a variance from the width of the buffer than to grant a parking variance. I think long-term, the impacts of a 6-foot wide instead of a 15-foot wide buffer that still has the fence and still has the same number of plantings is less than the impacts of removing a parking space. I guess I'm also on the west side less concerned about it because functionally, I think with all the plantings there, once they're grown to size, I don't know that having it any wider than the 6 feet would really make a significant difference once all the plantings are grown in. I mean, the fact that they're putting all the plants in there that they need to plant, I think, says that they're at least willing to try. So I'm inclined to support it. But I guess I'm willing to hear other input as well. Todd.
Yes, so my question to Chris was, he agreed with my comment that even though you can have a business here, this stretch of houses presents as residential. And right now, we're here just to address the barrier, not the building. What's being proposed is something that would make it more residential. So the project, when finished, would fit in better with the houses on either side. But ironically, maybe that's not the exact word, but ironically, they now have to address buffers. But you're really buffering between properties that present and look residential. The classic thing for a buffer when I think in Ann Arbor is years ago on Plymouth Road across from North Campus, there was a place where junk automobiles was stored, I think Deal Auto.
Yeah.
And of course they had a fence there because if I lived next door, I was sure as hell want a fence there so I wouldn't have to look at those. But here, when you're in the building, you're going to look next door to a building that has a big residential piece to it. So I think there's nothing there now. If they didn't do anything now, it wouldn't interfere because you'd be trying to separate properties that look residential. But because they're adding this building, they're going to have to do something. And I think to give them a variance to add more green shrubs and things, separating properties that in fact look residential is perfectly okay, even though one of them has a commercial component. So I think they're here somewhat because of the way the requirements of the ordinance, but we're really asking for more shrubs in a residential neighborhood is how I look at it. So I'm ready to vote yes on this for those reasons.
I think it's worth noting too that the, I guess you call it conflicting land use, the property is currently used as an office and they're adding a residential component,
right,
which is causing them to buffer from their residential neighbors, which is...
You said that better than I did, yeah.
I'm more concerned about the precedent for the adjoining, because that whole block is this C2B. And I mean, once we go down this road, we're not gonna, when the neighbors come in and ask to forego buffering for maybe a more intensive commercial use, what do we say? Oh, no, in your case, we won't do it. We did it over here because their additional use was residential, but we won't do it for you, even though the use is used because it's more intensive commercial. You know, it's, I just see a precedent being set that's going to be hard to walk back from.
I understand where your concern is, Dave. I guess I'm less concerned about a precedent because I think each parcel is considered on an individual basis. So if someone comes in that's right next door or right down the street a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I think we would evaluate it based on the merits of that lot. And for me, the fact that they have existing pavement here that goes right up to that line and they're not touching the pavement, they're not removing the pavement or changing the pavement, they're holding that pavement line, and that's a limiting factor in why they can't provide the buffer. I don't know that another piece of property would have that same limitation, so maybe it doesn't make sense to grant them the same variance. I don't know. Is there anyone else that wants to speak? Yeah, Chris, did you have something to add?
Yeah, the discussion just kind of triggered my memory. of when we were looking at proposing to rezone this block to residential, one of the residents who did want to rezone, because the big issue is, and I think this is the concern with Member DeVarty, is the cost. Because this is zoned commercial, they had to come in and one, site plan it, two, go through the variances, and all they wanted to do was exactly what this petitioner is doing. They wanted to probably put a 300 square foot addition on it. They said, forget it. So I think it actually might be cost prohibitive when they start getting into, you're going to make me site plan this and go to the zoning board of appeals, just to put a 300 square foot addition. So I have to compliment the petitioner, because it's very rare we're going to see somebody come in and put a 300 square foot addition on and go through this whole process for approval.
Yeah, Nicole.
I think it's, I'm also more inclined to support this, seeing that the residential neighbors actually didn't object to this. So, they're used to what's there, and this will probably be an improvement. So I think I will be supporting this.
Is there any other discussion? Are we ready for a motion?
I'm grappling with how to make a motion. Sure, I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Dave.
ZBA 20-031, 614 South Ashley Street. Variance. Based on the following finding and in accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variance from Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, Sections 524, A3, and B 1, 2, and 3, conflicting land use buffers. Various width differences or various width variances from the 15-foot conflicting land use buffers along the north, south, and west property lines, and a variance from all required landscaping and screening along the south property line. That the alleged practical difficulties are exceptional and peculiar to the property of the person requesting the variance and result from conditions that do not exist generally throughout the city.
Thank you, Dave. Do I have support?
Support.
Charlotte, thank you. Charlotte?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Mike? Julia?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Dave?
DeVarty, no.
All right, the request is granted. Moving on to petition ZBA 20-033, 907 and 913 South Main Street. Chris?
Do this. Let's try. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Just want to make sure. Let's move forward now. Okay, this is 907, 913 South Main Street. This is located just south of East Davis along Main Street. It's actually two lots. This has been previously approved by our planning commission and is subject to combining these two lots. They're going to demolish the existing two houses. It is zoned R4C, which is multifamily residential, and it is surrounded by multifamily residential. Here you can see the landscape plan. As part of the landscape plan, it is required to have two street trees, which are outlined in green, along South Main Street. The issue with this is that the street tree inventory list that is held by our our city forester, has this as a do not plant zone. So they don't want any trees, in fact, planted all along this area in South Main Street due to the narrow right-of-way, public right-of-way, and due to underground utilities. The roots will do damage. So they can't plant those 2 trees in that area. And here you get an idea if we show just an aerial. It's got the shared driveway, and it's the 2 lots that are kind of just right in front that we're showing that are going to be demolished to make room for the 13,000 square foot apartment complex. What I wanted to probably also explain is because the upcoming 3 requests for variances are very, very similar. So they all came in. It's kind of odd that it all came in at once. City staff is looking at doing an ordinance revision, so you won't have to see these types of proposals again. We're going to have these street trees because there was no code for this. We're going to change that and amend code so it'll go back to Planning Commission as a landscape modification. So yes, we are trying to address this, but it's going to take a couple of months to get this out of the purview of the Zoning Board of Appeals. So essentially, they're asking to remove the 2 street trees. We also asked the petitioner, well, could you take those trees and plant them on site to make up for it? But our city forester said, there is absolutely no place on this site because they've already added enough mitigation trees and conflicting land use buffers on this site. You can't plant them. So they're asking for relief of the 2 street trees shown in green. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions? Dave?
Generally, I see the point of this and would be in favor of it. I'm just going to ask you, as you're considering modifying the ordinance for the street trees, I know we have the Elizabeth Dean Fund, which has the purpose of keeping canopy coverage and trees throughout the city. And I know there are other instances where we allow developers to put money into a city fund, like a recreation fund or something, to mitigate other requirements that they might have as part of the site planning process. And I would ask you to, if you could try to put forward in the ordinance that if these street trees are required, that the developer makes some sort of a mitigating contribution to the Elizabeth Dean Fund, so the trees could be put somewhere else.
And I'll make a note of that.
Yeah.
Chris?
Any reason why we couldn't say that those 2 trees go, the equivalent of those 2 trees go to the Dean Fund? Just period.
Well,
I'm not an attorney, and I'm not sure we can base a variance on somebody making a contribution.
Well,
to the
they
Dean
get
Fund,
just swapped out.
But exactly. Knowing the petitioner, I don't think it would be an issue. I just don't know if that's something that the city could do at this stage. I'd have to further explore that question.
Julia?
I just want to quickly second what Dave said. It would be great if they, in the future, there was a contribution to the fund.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to make a motion unless other people have something to say.
We haven't heard from the petitioner yet, Dave.
Oh,
Oh, okay. Well, Chris made a good case.
Todd, did you have a question?
Oh, if I remember, the single fact is that you can't plant trees here because there are utilities underground.
Right.
So we're dealing with something that is rendered impractical. But given that they have to take the 2 trees out, I really think we should require them to keep that old disgusting couch in the right of way that was in the photo. I think we should put that in our motion.
And just for clarification, Member Grant, there aren't 2 existing trees there. They're not planting the 2 trees.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Correct. You are correct.
Yep.
Any other questions for Chris? All right, if the petitioner is ready, you may begin your presentation. You'll have 5 minutes.
You're muted.
I'll keep it very brief. First I want to say thank you very much for Chris and actually the rest of the team that helped us refine our plans. I think there's a number of suggestions that they made that actually improve the plans substantially. With regards to this specific issue, I think, we were doing a lot to put a lot of additional trees. I would love to have put the trees there, and unfortunately, because of the power, our initial plans actually had shown those trees to be in place, but because of the utility lines and the narrow right of way, we're unable to do that. And with regards to the contribution, I think we are making some kind of a contribution, right, Chris? Unfortunately, I don't have the exact number, and I was trying to look for that for other purposes, and I certainly would be open to it. And that's really all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the petitioner?
I'm still ready to make a motion.
All right, seeing none, if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now. Once you've called in, please raise your hand and city staff will call on you. I will note that we did receive some communication in our packet. We have a note of support from Donald Roof. We also have a note of opposition from Edith Fletcher. And it looks like there is a note here from Carolyn Kanganov, at 116 East Davis. It looks like she is opposed to the project in general.
No callers.
All right, thank you, Kristen. With that, we are in discussion. Or Dave's ready to make a motion if there is no discussion.
Go, Dave.
I understand longtime residents in this part of the city are concerned with the increased density and the new development. I totally understand where they're coming from. I know people that live in this area. That's not before us. What's before us are these street trees. And I don't see any reason to not grant this variance. I'll be voting for it.
I agree. I think that was well said, Dave. And I believe we're ready for a motion.
Okay. ZBA 20-033, 907 and 913 South Main Street. Variance based on the following findings and in accordance with, or following finding, and in accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variance from Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, Sections 520.10B, street trees required with site plan developments. A variance to waive the required street trees fronting South Main Street every 45 feet along the public street right-of-way abutting a site plan site. That the alleged practical difficulties are exceptional and peculiar to the property of the person requesting the variance and result from conditions that do not exist generally throughout the city.
Thank you, Dave. Do I have support?
Or
Support from Chris. Thank you. Nicole.
Yes.
Todd.
Yes.
Chris.
yes.
Elizabeth. Charlotte.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
I also vote yes. Dave.
DeVarty, yes.
Julia.
Yes.
The request is granted.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening.
Moving on to petition ZBA 20-034 2150 Freeze Avenue. I will need to recuse myself, so I will turn things over to Dave for this one.
Okay. So, am I muted? No.
I
John?
can hear, you're not muted, Dave. I can hear you.
Okay. Chris, if you could give us a presentation.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
And can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, 2150 Fries Avenue, also known as St. Francis of Assisi. This one also was previously approved as a site plan for a 14,500 square foot parish addition and special exception use, as it is a church use in a residential zoning district. It is zoned R1B, which is single family residential, but it is surrounded by, to the north, Tappan Middle School, to the east, apartments and office uses, to the south, Winchell Park, and to the west, residential uses, single family. Here you can see that it is bounded by Stadium, St. Francis, Winchell, and Fries. So it's almost got 4 street frontages to this site. If this petition sounds familiar as the last one, it's because it is. They're asking for the same variances, that because of the 2-foot wide, narrow public right-of-way, they're required to plant 19 street trees. As you'll see in the pictures, they cannot, or at least from our city forester, the root system and the overhang from the trees into East Stadium, they cannot plant the 19 trees in that area. In lieu of those 19 trees, as you can see, the petitioner along East Stadium has planted 21 trees on private property, so right behind where the sidewalk is. So in essence, they're not meeting the intent of the street trees, but they are in fact planting the minimum of 19 that's required on private property. So I've taken a couple of pictures as you're going. So the top picture is going eastbound down East Stadium. You can see some of the existing trees as you're going east from the top. You can see that where it's required is that these trees be located in this narrow 2-foot public right-of-way. Just, on the recommendation of our city forester, that's not going to work. And in lieu of that, you can see some of the existing trees and the proposed trees that will be planted on the inside of that sidewalk to meet the intent of the code as closely as possible. So it's a fairly simple one. It's somewhat similar to the last one with the exception of the number of trees, but I'm open to any questions you may have.
Are there any questions? Okay, hearing none. We could hear from the petitioner. I don't know who is it. Hobson?
If Hobson Black is on the line. Brian?
This is Brian Bagnick with Hobson Black Architects. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You
Okay.
have five minutes to make a presentation, and then if there are any questions from the board, we'll open it up for questions.
Okay, well, thank you. I think Chris Chang described it very well. There's only 2 foot of right-of-way, so we weren't able to plant the trees off the property, but we did our best we could to put the trees on the property, and actually have 2 more trees than would be required. Instead of the 19, we have 21. So again, we're doing the best we can with what we have there. So if you got any other further questions, let us know. We appreciate everyone taking the time to look at this.
And my name is Robert Keene. I'm the business manager for St. Francis of Assisi. Our parish has been here since 1950 and working on this project for the last 5 years. And it's a beautiful piece of property, and we're doing our best to add the trees where we can as part of the project. So I appreciate the time that you're taking tonight to listen to our appeal.
Thank you. Are there any questions from any board members? Okay, hearing none, I'm prepared to hear a motion if anybody would like to make one. I know I usually print out all the motion paperwork ahead of time. If anybody else would like to make a motion, I'm open to it. Or if you would allow the chair to make a motion, I would do it.
Hey, Dave,
Carla?
did you do a public hearing?
Oh, I guess I have to do that. Thank you very much. To speak, for any viewers that want to speak to this, that are watching, to speak during the public hearing for this item, please call 206-337-9723 or toll free 888-788-0099 and enter meeting ID 934-8311-5569. I believe those numbers are on the public access site. In order to be called on to speak, callers must press *9 to raise their hand. Callers will then be called upon by city staff one by one using the last 3 numbers of their phone number. Upon being called on, callers will hear an audible announcement that the host is allowing them to speak.
All right, no, I don't see any callers.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll give 1 minute for anybody to call in and then close the public hearing. Okay, the public hearing's closed. So if anybody would like to make a motion, or if with the approval of the members of the board, I would make a motion if nobody else is prepared to.
If you want to rest your larynx, David, I'm happy to do it, but you can also do it, Dave. I don't feel that I
Go for it. I
jump in.
think it's more appropriate.
I don't want to hug. Maybe one of the other members should read one, but I don't see this groundswell of competition. So
it's more
I can
appropriate.
make the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Nicole.
All right. All right. ZBA 20-034, 2150 Freeze Avenue. Variance based on the following findings and in accordance with the established standards for approval. The Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variance from Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, Section 5.20.10B, street trees required with site plan developments. A variance to waive the required street trees fronting West Stadium Boulevard every 45 feet along the public right-of-way abutting a site. That the alleged practical difficulties are exceptional and peculiar to the property of the person requesting the variance and result from conditions that do not exist generally throughout the city.
Okay. Candace abstains as a recusal. Mike.
Yes.
Chris.
You're muted, Chris.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Nicole.
Yes.
Todd.
Yes.
Elizabeth.
Yes.
Charlotte.
Yes.
Julia.
Yes.
And I vote yes. The variance is granted. And with that, I will give up my duties as vice chair and ask Candace to take the seat again.
Thank you.
Candace,
I'm back.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Dave. Well done. Moving on to our last petition this evening, ZBA 20-035 416 West Huron. Chris?
Great. If this one sounds familiar, it is because it is familiar. It's another street tree variance request. This subject site is located on the north side of West Huron. It's adjacent to the railroad tracks. I want to move forward. It is zone D2, which is the downtown interface district. I wanted to move forward quickly from this map because the lot is actually both these lots. The previous one only outlined kind of the west portion. So it's the whole lot that's facing the railroad tracks. This one was also approved as a site plan for Planning Commission because they proposed that they want to make improvements to the parking lot. This gravel area is now going to be more asphalt. So it's going to be an improvement. and it did receive approval by the Planning Commission contingent upon approval from the Zoning Board of Appeals. We'll have a blow up of this section, but essentially, it's a little difficult to see. This parking lot is located right over the Allen Creek drain. So as part of the approval of the interior parking lot landscaping, they did get a landscape modification. These are not trees, these are shrubs with, I guess, a low level root system so it wouldn't dig into the ground. So they did get a landscape modification. Unfortunately, street trees don't qualify as a landscape modification. And I think with this blow up, you can see so the Allen Creek drain, you can see these dotted lines. If you move, that's where the Allen Creek drain is located. You can also see as it's spreading out, that's actually floodway in the city. So they have met their landscaping by landscape modification on this site. And in fact, they did plant 3 street trees, but they're required to have 2 more. They're asking for a variance from those 2 because it is located directly on the Allen Creek drain, and the Washtenaw County Drain Commissioner's office will not allow trees over the drain. So again, if there's any questions, I'm here to answer them. Oh,
Thank you.
if you want to, also, I guess I forgot the street view. As you can see, this is where the 2 trees would be proposed. And these are where the 3, I am told that they are existing. This is just an old Google map that we had uploaded. So the 3 are there, the 2 are not. And here's another view of where the trees would be proposed. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions? All right, if the petitioner is ready, you may begin your presentation. You'll have 5 minutes.
Good evening, all. My name is Matt Buds. I am the attorney working with the property owner as far as this project goes. I just want to say thank you to all of you, and glad to get us closer to the end of the agenda here tonight, bringing up the rear. Wanted to say, I think it's been fairly well explained. I'll just say practical difficulties and peculiar circumstances in that the Allen Creek drain does not run underneath all of the properties in the city. And not all properties have a situation where the county Water Resources Department and the Drain Commission office says that you can't plant. So that's the circumstances. I will say we worked very strongly with the city to get as much green into this project. For those of you that are familiar with it, it does not have a lot of green currently, and trying to get as much green as we could without disrupting that easement has always been the mission here. And I think that we've done our best to meet that. Happy to answer any questions that any of you would have. Thank you again.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? All right, seeing none, if there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now. Once you've called in, please raise your hand. City staff will call on you based on the last 3 digits of your phone number.
No callers.
Thank you, Kristen. We are in discussion. Julia.
I think any green added in there will be great. And if it can't be trees, that's better than what there is. I'm just kind of curious, maybe Chris, that block had trees planted curbside, not this past summer, but the summer before. And it was like the worst tree planting job I've ever seen. And most of those trees have died. So
I will pass that along to our city forester.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to speak to that for just a quick moment.
Sure, go ahead.
My understanding is that that was part of, and I believe it was either a county or an MDOT road project, that those trees were taken out and then put in, died, and there have been new trees planted. I believe they're probably about this big the last I saw them. So I think we're all going to hope for growth and hope that that's better. But that was an issue that came up at Planning Commission, that people said, are there even trees there? And we said there were, then they were gone, and now they're tiny. So that's at least my understanding of where we stand with that.
Thank you. Any other, I guess, comments or discussion items? If not, I think we're ready for a motion.
Can I make a motion?
All right, thank you.
ZBA 20-035, 416 West Huron Street. Variance, based on the following findings and in accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variance from Chapter 55 Unified Development Code, Sections 5.20.10b, street trees required with site plan developments. A variance to waive the required 2 street trees fronting West Huron Street every 45 feet along the public street right-of-way abutting a site plan site.
Thank you, Charlotte. Do we have support? Support from Nicole? All right, Dave. You were muted, Dave.
Givardi, yes.
Thank you. Charlotte?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
I also vote yes. The request is granted.
Thank you all.
Moving on, we have no unfinished business. We have addressed new business. Communications, I believe we noted all of the communications during the petitions. Public comment. If there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on any item that was not on our agenda this evening and wishes to address the ZBA, please call in now. Raise your hand and staff will call on you.
No callers.
Thank you, Kristen. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn? Chris? Oh, you're muted, Chris.
Before we do that, I have a question. So we had 3 petitions this evening that had been told by the city that, no, we don't want you to plant that there. But yet the petitioners had to spend $750 to come before us to get the variance that the city didn't want the thing to happen anyway. Does that seem a little incongruous to anyone here?
Yes.
It seems like if the city can't tell one hand, its left hand can't tell the other hand, please don't do that, and it has to cost somebody $750, it seems a little weird. Todd, do you want to discuss that?
I'd like to speak to that if I could. So the only board or authority to grant a variance is the Zoning Board of Appeals. So staff does not have the authority to go ahead and say, well, since you can't plan them based on this department or that department saying that you shouldn't have to, staff doesn't have the ability to go ahead and waive requirements. Only you guys do, this board.
Right, but can we mitigate the fee in that situation or something? I mean, as a citizen, I'd be a little bit annoyed if I had to pay $750 to get the left hand of the city to do something the right hand wants it to do.
Couple of things. One is cost of doing development, and 2, this process and this board costs staff time. There's also advertising dollars in the Washtenaw Legal News, and we send out postcards to 300 feet of in a radius of 300 feet from the subject property. So we have a lot of printing costs, mailing costs. So we far exceed the $750 in staff time and printing time.
I get that, but this isn't something the petitioner is bringing to us. This is something inside the city.
Well, they're bringing a development proposal to us, and that development's required to meet all the requirements of the ordinance. And so when they can't, even if we agree that a variance should be granted, it still has to go through the process.
All right.
Can I say something? I'm a strong supporter of the Constitution and of the laws of the land. The staff can't be in a position, long time hired staff to grant variances. It's like, who do they give the variance to, on what standards, whatever. So we have these laws in place. We have an appointed board. This is something that's statewide. There are ZBAs everywhere. throughout the state, and it's part of a legal process required to be public and open as part of a democratic process. And
Gotcha.
in order to change it, what we need is for this tree thing, and I think, Chris, you spoke to this, that the staff is going to work on an ordinance change to address this exact situation so that it doesn't have to come before the ZBA in the future. But that's something that hey, democracy is a messy thing. And it's part of what we have to live with to, instead of having insurrections at state capitals or U.S. Capitol.
Sounds like a good post-meeting conversation.
Chris, I will say.
Chris, did you have something to add?
Over beer when we're able to.
Yeah, I would just like to, I think, address some of Member Fraley's concerns. I think Member DeVardi did answer it correctly that we are changing our code, but it still should be noted they'll be charged for landscape modifications going to Planning Commission. So it's probably going to all come out in the wash that it's probably about the same price. So they're still going to get a landscape modification.
Okay.
And the second point is if the petitioner really wants remedy due to the cost, they can contact their city council person. It will be up to council to introduce it to refund the petitioner, but that will be up to the petitioner to contact their council rep if they want to seek a refund.
Good. Thank you.
Any other comment? Yeah, Dave?
I just wanted to thank everybody. This was a long meeting, the longest since I've been here. And everybody's been great. And I'm sorry I was the lone no vote on one of them.
Yes, well done, everyone. With that said,
You have to vote your conscience, Dave. We're all smart. We all give our contributions, and we see things a little differently. It's very interesting for me to see how my fellow members look at something different from how I look at it. It's actually helpful. It's quite interesting.
I'd like to make a motion to call an end to the day.
I support that.
thank you, Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody. Have a nice evening.
Bye-bye.